So the Supreme Court killed the private employer vax mandate, as we talked about on Friday, but that doesn't mean that there are no more private employer vax mandates, because now some employers are choosing to keep them anyway, even though they have no excuse to, no reason to. They have no reason to because they're not being forced to do it. Also because there's no, as we've discussed, there's no rational scientific basis for it when we know that vaxxed and unvaxxed alike spread the virus. So there's just there's nothing to grab onto here in terms of a reason for a vax mandate. You have no foundation for it. But employers are doing it anyway. And Elijah Schaffer, a great podcast host over at The Blaze, has this screenshot reportedly from an email from Carhartt to their employees. And this is what it says. It's gone viral today. It says, Carhartt Associates, many of you have asked how the recent Supreme Court decision on the OSHA mandate for large employers will impact our associates, so we want to provide some clarity. The ruling does not change Carhartt's mandatory vaccination program, which went into effect on January 4th. As you know, we have extended the vaccination deadline for both RCV and Madisonville Associates to February 15th. This date also remains in effect. We put workplace safety at the very top of our priority list, and the Supreme Court's recent ruling doesn't impact that core value. We in the medical community continue to believe vaccines are necessary to ensure a safe working environment for every associate and even perhaps their households. Which doesn't make any sense at all, of course. So Carhartt, they're still going to have their vaccine mandate. Here's what I'll say about this. I think these companies need to be held accountable for this. But who holds them accountable? Well, the consumers need to do it. So I put the onus on us, primarily as consumers, on myself. I have been a Carhartt customer in the past. As an avid fan of Bass Pro Shops, you go there and you're going to find plenty of Carhartt. That's where I put the onus. So I think that, and I do that much more than I put the onus on the employees. And this is an important point. Because I think sometimes we're a little bit too blithe and casual about just declaring that employees should quit under these circumstances. I hear that a lot. I hear that in conservative media, for example. Well, they should just quit. And that's really easy to say. I mean, it's easy for me to say. We don't have a vaccine mandate here. Our employer is one of the ones that went to the Supreme Court to fight this. So I don't have to worry about it. I'm getting a paycheck and I'm feeding my kids and I'm bringing the bacon home to my family. So I'm good. So it's really easy for me to sit here and say, well, you should quit your job. You out there watching this right now, just quit right now, today. Go home and explain it to your wife later. You'll be fine. Now, if you can quit your job, then great. Then, if you can and you decide to quit your job in protest of something like this to stand up for your rights, then I think that's fantastic. I think I admire that. But I know that I'm a father. I have a family. And that's my first responsibility. And I put that responsibility over everything and everyone. Really, I mean, over conservatism, over liberty, over my country. I'll choose my family over my country. I'll choose it over literally everything and everyone except God himself. Those are my values. And what that means is that if I'm in this position, if I was put in the same position that, say, someone at Carhartt's in, I'm not going to leave my job in a huff all at once and make my children go hungry. That might be what you want me to do for your own sake, but it's not what I'm going to do. Because I have my family, and I care about them more than I care about you. And I care about them more than I care about your values. So what I would need to do if I was in this position and I wanted to leave, and I would want to leave, but I would need to secure another job first. And that takes time. It's not something that I can afford to do, just leaving the job all at once, going out in a blaze of glory to prove a point. That's not fair to my kids. Okay, so I can go home feeling good, and I could say to my kids, well, I took a stand today, and well, that's great, Dad, but how are we going to eat tonight? That's my first responsibility, is to make sure my kids are eating. Not to make a point about vaccine mandates. Not that the point isn't important, but it's not as important as my duty as a father. So, does that mean that we should just lay down? Am I advocating that? Not at all. I'm putting the onus on the consumer. Because as consumers, we could crush this. We have that ability, much more than the employees do. Because the other thing is, as an employee, you quit. Again, I admire it if you decide to do that, but if you do, they're going to replace you. They're going to find someone who will cooperate with the vaccine mandate, and they'll just replace you, and that's it. And continue doing what they want to do. You can't replace consumers, though. Or at least they're a lot harder to replace. So, as consumers, if we say to Carhartt, rather than pointing to the employees who have families to feed and saying, you all should quit, just quit. How about we make the decision not to buy Carhartt until they reverse this tyrannical, senseless, irrational, immoral mandate? Because here's the great thing. We have nothing at stake. We don't sacrifice anything. I mean, literally nothing. You sacrifice Carhartt. Okay, just buy a jacket from a different company. You're not going to freeze to death. You'll find some company that doesn't have a vaccine mandate where you can buy a jacket. Plus, you probably already have 15 of them in your closet anyway. So we could do that, but here's what we do as consumers. We sit back and say, all of you should quit. And then we continue to patronize these same companies. We could bring these companies to their knees by using the power we have as consumers, and it costs us nothing to do. So think about the sacrifice of leaving your job when you have a family to feed versus the sacrifice of just not buying crap from one company and buying it from another instead. Who's making the greater sacrifice? Who should we be pointing to and expecting them to, expecting more from? So that's what gets me. Especially a company like Carhartt. I would guess the majority of their employees are going to be more of the conservative, blue-collar sort of persuasion. Okay, there's not a lot of prissy leftists in Los Angeles or San Francisco or Manhattan walking around in Carhartt. So we could put an end to this. We could. If we choose not to, then that's our fault. Don't blame the employees for that. Hey, listen, hit the subscribe button. Do it right now. I demand it. And I thank you for your compliance. It is somewhat appreciated.